9:15 on 12/13, and another black king will be taken from the scene, said rapper Snoop Dogg, himself a former Crip, on the execution of Tookie Williams. In 1971, Raymond Washington, the founder of the Crips, Raymond Washington, formed an alliance with Stanley Tookie Williams, which established the Crips as the first major African American street gang in Los Angeles and served as one of the co-leaders. Raymond Washington, in 1974, Raymond Washington was convicted of robbery, and he received a 5-year prison sentence, during which his leadership and his influence in the Crips declined. On August 9th, 1979, Raymond Washington was murdered in a drive-by shooting shortly after his release from prison. He was only 25 years old. Bloods have that distinctive hand signal, right? Where you do the spells out blood with your you know it. You know the thing. Bloods have that distinctive hand signal. I heard Cineola was just primarily only a drug operation. They weren't a violent shakedown operation, not terrorism, whereas MS13, the MS13 was the whole racket. Just drugs? Why limit yourself to just drugs when you have so many other criminal enterprises to get into? MS13 will rob and rape old ladies, knock them down to the ground, push them over to rob them, take what they got. Keep the community terrorized. The motto for MS13 is rape, murder, control. 13% of the homicides in this country are gang-related. 13% of all the murders in America are gang-related. That's more homicides than from mass shootings or terrorism. The MS13 gang actually formed here in America in the 1970s. Immigrants from El Salvador trying to escape a brutal civil war fled to Los Angeles, where they settled in poorer parts of the city already controlled by other gangs, smoked marijuana, and listened to heavy metal music. The newcomers bonded to socialize and to protect themselves from other gangs, and the La Mara Salvatrucha was born. The La Mara Salvatrucha was born. This cruelty of the distinguished members of the Maras, or Moreros, resulted in some being recruited by the Cineola cartel, battling against Los Zetas in the Mexican drug war. Against the Los Zetas in the Mexican drug war. The Crips are one of the largest and most violent associations of street gangs in the United States. There's an estimated 30 to 35,000 members in 2008. Now that compares to MS13, which boasts about 10,000 members of the U.S. and about 30,000 internationally. So it's one of the biggest gangs in the world, but the Crips have 3 times as much. There's 3 Crips per every MS13. There's 10,000 MS13, 30,000 Crips. And George Washington was able to defeat the British Army with 12,000 soldiers. The U.S. government has designated MS13 as a transnational criminal organization. So it's like transnational corporations, but a transnational, even our mafia, American mafia, is being exported. Another source suggests Crips may have evolved from cripplers. Talk about the etymology, where they come with Crips. There's one theory that says it's Cribs because they were all pretty young. But Raymond Washington used to be in a gang called the Cripplers. So that's it, isn't it? The Cripplers, just short. Crips are just short for cripplers. And what are cripplers? Probably people that go around crippling other people. They're the cripplers. They go around crippling others. It was a 1970 street gang in Watts. And Raymond Washington, the founder of the Crips, was a member. A backronym for Crips, says an ex-FBI guy, and this could just be the damn government. They see communists all over the place, and it's like, well, Crips clearly means CRIP. That's a communist revolution in progress right there. The Crips is a communist revolution in progress. Well, if that's the case, then sign me up. But that's the government putting that stuff on. And in fact, I think he's going to say like it's not political at all. He's saying that it wasn't even Black Panthers. There is a vacuum. The Black Panthers were saying we could just police ourselves. But when MLK and integration failed, then you saw the rise of the Black Power movement. And then when Black Power failed, then you saw the rise of the gangs. As large as MS13 is, though it doesn't represent a particularly large U.S. criminal presence compared to the total number of gang members in the country, MS13 is just one of some 33,000 gangs that the FBI recognizes, and it accounts for just a fraction of the 1.4 million gang members nationwide. So there's 33,000 gangs in America. The motto for MS13 is rape, kill, control. La Mara Salvatrucha. La Mara Salvatrucha, known colloquially and infamously as MS-13, it's a vicious, barbaric street gang now in as many as 40 states across the U.S. MS-13 members murder and rape, maim, and terrorize. Now, of course, all criminal gangs are terrible organizations, terrible associations. You should not join any kind of clique or gang to do evil. I'll join with anybody to do good. I will join with nobody to do evil. La Mara Salvatrucha. That's kind of makes me think of La Casa Nostra. La Mara Salvatrucha. It's MS-13. That's what the MS stands for. Mara Salvatrucha. And then 13 is supposed to be the letter M. At age 15, Tookie Williams was invited into a small West Side clique after he befriended a local teenager, Donald Doc Sweetback Archie. Tookie Williams soon earned the clique's respect after he beat up one of their members for insulting his mother. Tookie Williams became the unofficial leader of this clique, a small West Side clique, as his violent reputation began to spread across South Central. In 1969, age 15, Tookie Williams was arrested in Inglewood for car theft and was sent to the Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall in Downey. While doing time at the detention center, Williams was introduced to Olympic weightlifting by the facility's gym coach, which would spark an interest in bodybuilding. By his release from custody in 1971, age 17, Tookie Williams was physically bigger, physically stronger. According to Tookie Williams, upon his release from custody, the review board asked him what he planned to do after he was released. And Tookie Williams said, "I'm going to be the biggest leader. I'm going to be the leader of the biggest gang in the world." At his funeral, the last words of Tookie Williams echoed from a tape played to mourners whom he asked to spread a message to his loved ones. "The war within me is over. I battled my demons and I was triumphant. Teach them how to avoid our destructive footsteps. Teach them to strive for higher education. Teach them to promote peace and teach them to focus on rebuilding the neighborhoods that you, others, and I helped to destroy." You want everybody to be good American citizens. The reason why being a good American citizen, you got all these freedoms, all these civil liberties. I want a free society, not a criminal society. I want a lawful society. Abraham Lincoln said we needed to have a religion. A religion that revered the laws of this nation. The war within me is over. This is Tookie Williams. Echoed from a tape played to mourners. The war within me is over. I battled my demons and I was triumphant. This is what Tookie Williams, Raymond Washington, right? Raymond Washington gets gunned down, and when he's 25, Tookie Williams is going to get executed in 2005 by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Or actually, he could have granted him clemency, but he let the court systems kill Tookie Williams. The war within me is over. I battled my demons. I was triumphant. Teach them how to avoid our destructive footsteps. Teach them to strive for higher education. Teach them to promote peace and teach them to focus on rebuilding the neighborhoods that you, others, and I helped to destroy. A quick explanation of the group's name, Mara. Mara is the word used in El Salvador for gang. The word Salvatrucha and the 13 that follows are explained here. Salvatrucha is a combination of the words salva, which is an abbreviation for Salvadorian, and trucha, which is a slang term for alert, lookout, or cunning. The 13 refers to the 13th letter of the alphabet, M, which denotes the gang's allegiance. M, if you do the devil's horns down, the rockers' horns, heavy metal, M, MS13. Some people also say that the M denotes the gang's allegiance apparently to the Mexican Mafia, which is a prison gang. The Mexican Mafia. Stanley Tukey Williams had met Raymond Lee Washington in 1969. The two decided to unite their local gang members from the west and east sides of South Central Los Angeles. In order to battle neighboring street gangs, most of the members were 17 years old. In his memoir, Stanley Tukey Williams also refuted claims that the group was a spin-off of the Black Panther Party or formed for a community agenda, writing that it depicted a fighting alliance against street gangs, nothing more, nothing less. Raymond Washington, who attended Fremont High School, was the leader of the East Side Crips, and Tukey Williams, who attended Washington High School, led the West Side Crips. Tukey Williams recalled that a blue bandana was first worn by Crips founding member Curtis Buddha Morrow. Curtis Buddha Morrow, as part of his color-coordinated clothing of blue Levi's, a blue shirt, and dark blue suspenders. A blue bandana was worn in tribute to Morrow after he was shot and killed on February 23rd, 1973. Curtis Buddha Morrow. The color then became associated with the Crips. Blue. Oh, so the Crips are blue and the Bloods are red. Okay. Many MS-13 members were deported to El Salvador after the end of the Salvadorian Civil War in 1992. Upon being arrested, facilitated the spread of the Gang of Central America. So, yeah, we deported MS-13 members. They formed here in America. We deported them. And now they're all over Central America. Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala. MS-13 is currently active in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, Central America. Most members are in Central America and El Salvador in particular. El Salvador means the Savior. There is some dispute about the etymology of the name. Some sources state the gang is named for La Mara, which is a street in San Salvador, and the Salvatrucha guerrillas who fought in the Salvadoran Civil War. Additionally, the word Mara means gang in Clalishi slang and is taken from Marabunta, the name of a fierce type of ant. Salvatrucha may be a combination of the words Salvadoran and trucha, a Clalishi word for being alert. The term Salvatruchas has been explained as a reference to Salvadoran peasants trained to become guerrilla fighters, referred to as the Farabundo Marti National Liberation Front. The 13 is believed to stand for the letter M, the 13th letter of the alphabet, but it's also rumored to pay homage to the Mexican Mafia prison gang. Marabunta, a fierce type of ant. Ants are formidable, especially red ants. And ants, they're smart. You get rid of the ant hill, they still have a whole underground network. And if you try to get rid of the underground network, they'll just move 20 feet on down the line and build an entire brand new colony. According to the 2009, the gang is estimated to have 30 to 50,000 members and associated members worldwide. 80 to 10,000 who reside in the U.S. So MS-13, 10,000 MS-13, 30,000 Crips. And how many Bloods? I don't know. Do we just have the numbers for the Crips are 30,000, MS-13's 10,000. Don't have the numbers for the Bloods. Not yet, at least. Not yet. aspirants and the people that want to become MS13, in order to become, you got to do a beat-in for 13 seconds. The initiation for MS13 is that they get to just pound on your body for 13 seconds, and then once you've been initiated, once you're beaten into, then you're in MS13. They're probably blood in, blood out too, so you might have to do some more hazing projects or crimes. In Central America, the gang is strongest in the Northern Triangle countries: El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. It's estimated that MS13 and the 18th Street Gang employ 60,000 people between the two of them, which ironically makes them the largest employers in El Salvador. The 18th Street Gang and the MS13 are the largest employers in El Salvador. What? I've seen a Chicago Bulls symbol with a red bandana on it representing the Bloods. Bloods and Crips are notorious. Those are the Bloods versus the Crips are like the Hatfields versus the McCoys. It's like the famous Alabama versus Mississippi rivalry, the New York versus California, America versus the USSR rivalry. They're both primarily black street gangs founded in LA, California. The Bloods are the Reds. They wear red colors. Crips wear blue colors. They have gang symbols, distinctive hand signals, and some of it actually just comes from the sign language, American Sign Language. The Bloods comprise various subgroups known as sets. So their tribes are sets among which significant differences exist, such as colors, clothing, operations, and political ideas that may be in open conflict with each other. It's kind of crazy that Raymond Washington, he's going to start the Crips, and then he's going to go back to the Crips after he served time in jail, but he's not going to have any power in the Crips. He's not going to be as powerful as he once was. So that means some other Crips, and then there's a lot of Crips that are against each other. Since the gang's creation, it has branched throughout the United States. MS-13 is often public in its violence, infanticide, and femicide are common. So the mass murder of women and children, with El Salvador hosting the third highest femicide rate in the world. In 2016, 1 in 5,000 Salvadoran women were killed. 1 in 5,000. Legal impunity is a key factor in femicide cases. Only 5% result in convictions. That's Me Too. Violent retributions, that's like some major Me Too. That's like Me Too, like fucking shit. Violent retributions target both enemy gangs as well as their families, friends, neighbors. Entire families have been known to be wiped out in a single attack. This is MS-13 in a single attack, regardless of age. Buses full of passengers from the wrong parts of town will be burned in broad daylight. Passengers are still aboard. Police officers, government officials, community organizations are frequent targets. Attacks like these have led the Supreme Court of El Salvador to authorize the classification of gangs as terrorist organizations. The Bloods gang was formed initially to compete against the influence of the Crips in Los Angeles. The rivalry originated in the late 1960s when Raymond Washington and other Crips attacked Sylvester Scott and Benson Owens, two students at Centennial High School in Compton, California. As a result, Scott formed the Piru Street Gang. And the Piru, Piru Street Gang is the first Bloods gang. Owens subsequently established the West Piru Gang. So just like Raymond and Tukey, you had the West Side Crips and the East Side Crips. And Raymond Washington, it's almost like Batman and the Joker. It's like, you say you made me, I made you. Hey, what's the problem here? Raymond Washington, in a way, he didn't just form the Crips, he also formed the Bloods. And he formed the Bloods by attacking two students at Centennial High School, and then they started a gang. So in a way, that's nation building. You know what they call that? They call that nation building. So even if Raymond Washington's Crips didn't persevere, then it was going to be the Bloods, unless, depending on how strong the nation was. The rivalry with the Bloods, this is stereotypical. It's also, I think everybody knows about the Bloods and the Crips. The Bloods initially formed to provide Piru street gang members protection from the Crips. Interesting. Right. The rivalry started in the 1960s when Washington and other Crip members attacked Sylvester Scott and Benson Owens, two students at Centennial High School. After the incident, Scott formed the Pirus. Owens established the West Piru Gang. The Crips is an alliance of street gangs that's based on the coastal regions of Southern California. Founded in LA in 1969, mainly by Raymond Washington and Stanley Williams, the Crips were initially a single alliance between two autonomous gangs. It's now a loosely connected network of individual sets, often engaged in open warfare with one another. Traditionally, since around 1973, its members have worn blue clothing. Tookie Williams, Raymond Washington. The Bloods were initially formed to provide members protection from the Crips. Many of the non-gang members used to call one another Blood. So you have W.E.B. Du Bois, you got Booker T. Washington, Malcolm X, MLK, Black Panthers. And because white America has a problem with goddamn... They're a bunch of racists. Since white America's a bunch of fucking racists, and they had problems with that football player genuflect, and he got down on his knee as a protest, and then somehow that was the worst fucking crime ever on the fucking face of the planet. He genuflected to the damn national anthem and the fucking flag, and somehow that was really insulting to people. So if you don't like a peaceful protester, and you don't like W.B. Du Bois, a writer, Booker T. Washington, a laborer, if you don't like Malcolm X, a family man who says, go defend yourself, MLK, who says, let's integrate and be, one and marry, the Black Panther says we're going to police our own organizations, then that leads to the outbreak of gangs. I even read that the Boy Scouts kept the black boys out. The Boy Scouts, so South Central LA in the 1950s, if you were a black boy and you wanted to be part of the Boy Scouts, they were fucking racist back then. What the fuck? Malcolm X, MLK, they're going to get blown away. A lot of Black Panthers are going to get shot, picked apart, put in jail. Booker T. Washington said, let's just work. Let's just, win by working. W.E.B. Du Bois says, we need to get political. Shortly after his release from prison, Tookie Williams was approached by Raymond Washington at Washington Preparatory High School after hearing of Tookie Williams through a mutual friend of both young men. The friend had informed Raymond Washington of Tookie Williams' toughness and his willingness to fight members of larger, more established street gangs such as the L.A. Brims and the Chain Gang. According to Tookie Williams' account of the meeting, what struck him about Raymond Washington was that besides being incredibly muscular, Raymond Washington and his cohorts were dressed similar to Tookie Williams and his clique. They were both wearing leather jackets with starched Levi's jeans and suspenders. By 1978, there were 45 Crip gangs called Sets in Los Angeles. They were heavily involved in the production of PCP, marijuana, and amphetamines. On March 11th, 1979, Tookie Williams, a member of the West Side Crips, was arrested for 4 murders. On August 9th, 1979, Raymond Washington was gunned down. Raymond Washington had been against Crip infighting, and after his death, several Crip sets started fighting against each other. The Crips' leadership was dismantled, prompting a deadly gang war between the Roland 60 neighborhood Crips and 8 Trey gangster Crips that led nearby Crip sets to choose sides and align themselves with either the neighborhood Crips or the gangster Crips, waging large-scale war in South Central and other cities. Violence is a major part of the glue which binds the MS13. It's part of every stage of an MS13 member's life. Potential members commit violent acts to be considered for membership and ultimately to gain entry. They are then beaten into the gang in a ritual that has left more than one permanently scarred. They move up the gang ladder by putting in the work and showing commitment, euphemisms for committing violent acts in the name of the gang. Are you showing commitment? How committed are you to the gang? Well, a lot of crimes. Oh, that's good commitment. What about initiative? That's what ROTC says. ROTC. You got to show initiative in 2017. As many as 10 MS13 members in Maryland lured a man into a park, stabbed him more than 100 times, decapitated him, and cut out his heart. According to the Washington Post, an 18-year-old Virginia woman confessed to taking part in the killing of a 15-year-old girl in retaliation for her boyfriend's murder. The 18-year-old stabbed the younger girl 13 times and videotaped the murder to show to the MS13 higher-ups. Those are just two of many shocking killings attributed to MS13. More than 95% of people who join gangs, Pyrouz says, eventually leave them. More than 95% of the people who join gangs, Pyrouz says, eventually leaves them. Alliance with the Folk Nation in the late 1980s. In the early 1990s, as many Crip gang members were being sent to various prisons across the country, an alliance was formed between the Crips and the Folk Nation in Midwest and Southern U.S. prisons. This alliance was established to protect gang members incarcerated in state and federal prison. It is strongest within the prisons and less effective outside. The alliance between the Crips and Folks is known as 8-Ball. A broken 8-ball indicates a disagreement or beef between Folks and Crips. Raymond Washington's mother had said Raymond Washington was a good kid when he was a boy. Raymond Washington didn't go out of his way to fight or do anything bad, but if somebody came up to him, he would protect himself. Raymond Washington was well built. He tried to protect the community and keep the bad guys out. But after a while, every time I looked up, the police were coming to the house looking for Raymond. Some neighbors remembered Raymond Washington differently. Lori Griffin Moss, who resided across the street from Raymond Washington on East 76th Street, said, I don't have a lot of good to say about Raymond. Raymond was a bully, a muscular bully. He wouldn't let anybody from outside our neighborhood bother us because he would bother us. Raymond could be very mean. Raymond Washington. Mara Salvatrucha, the MS13. The MS stands for Mara Salvatrucha. It's an international criminal gang. Originated in LA in the 1970s, 1980s. Originally, the gang was set up to protect Salvadoran immigrants from other gangs in the LA area. Over time, the gang grew into a more traditional criminal organization. MS-13 is defined by its cruelty and its rivalry with the 18th Street Gang. On March 21st, 1972, shortly after a concert featuring Wilson Pickett and Curtis Mayfield, 20 youths belonging to the Crips attacked and robbed Robert Ballou Jr. outside the Hollywood Palladium. Ballou was beaten to death after refusing to give up his leather jacket. The sensational media coverage of the crime and the continued assaults by the Crips increased their notoriety. Several non-Crips gangs formed during this period were no match for the Crips and became concerned with the escalating Crip attacks. The Pyrouz, Black P. Stones, Athens Park Boys, and other gangs not aligned with the Crips often clashed with them. On June 5th, 1972, 3 months after Ballou's murder, Frederick Little Country Garrett was murdered by a West Side Crip. Frederick Little Country Garrett was murdered by a West Side Crip. This marked the first Crips murder against another gang member, and it motivated non-Crip members to align with each other. The Brims struck back August 4th, 1972 by murdering Thomas Ellis, an original West Side Crip. By 1972, the Pyrouz held a meeting in their neighborhood to discuss the growing Crip presence and intimidation. Several gangs felt victimized by the Crips, joined the Pyrouz to create a new federation of non-Crip neighborhoods. This alliance became the Bloods. The Pyrouz are therefore considered the founders of the Bloods. By 1978, there were 15 Blood sets. Crips still outnumbered Bloods 3-1. To assert their power, the Bloods became increasingly violent. During the 1980s, Bloods began distributing crack cocaine in Los Angeles. Blood membership soon rose dramatically, as did the number of states in which they were present. These increases were